This is the opening of my fantasy novel, We Were Gods. It was on one of my summer trips, the trips for which I was famous, wherein I picked some mysterious, unpopulated place and trekked through it on my own. Well, not on my own. I wasn't entirely reckless. I always took a local guide with me through the more treacherous regions, and an extra man or two when I thought it absolutely necessary. I had a guide with me on that trip through the forest of Aldota, once ancient Cantfu, but he had slept late, and I had wandered off a little ways on my own. It wasn't long before I came upon the clearing. I stopped still at the edge of it, staring in wonder. The forest up until that point had been dense and lush, so overripe with vines and branches laden with leaves that it was difficult for light to find its way through. But here, the sunlight that poured into the space was cool and soft, the light of early spring, though it was actually late in the summer. There was no explaining what I saw before me. There was no explaining the magnificent marble temple that stood there, visibly aged, but somehow not in ruins. Actually, as I looked at it longer, I had to wonder what it was that had made me assume its impressive age. Why had my mind immediately labeled it as ancient? There was no outward sign of decay, no crumbling of stone or overgrowing of weeds. The forest had not reclaimed the spot, as it doubtless would have done had the structure been anywhere near as old as I had originally assumed. Regardless, old or new, it made no sense. I had been told that no one ventured this far into the forest and that no one ever had. No one dared. My guide wasn't a guide because he had made the trip before. He was a guide because he knew the flora and fauna of that region better than I did, and he was an excellent tracker. He would be able to get us back to civilization once my exploration was done. I had to pay the man a fortune to get him to come with me, and even after I had convinced him, he had continued to call me a crazy lady, though he'd said it in his own language, for wanting to travel there. He said that there was nothing to see. He said that the forest had never been inhabited. I told him that that was exactly why I wanted to see it, and again he replied with his common utterance of Shihikela, crazy lady. What I was seeing before me should not have existed. How could the temple have come to be there in the middle of the forest, untouched and perfectly preserved? The place felt so alive that I half expected a priestess in flowing white linen to walk out of the imposing columned front of the structure. I wasn't sure why I thought of a priestess rather than a priest. Perhaps it was because I myself am a woman, but I think it was more than that. There was an atmosphere about the place that struck me as distinctly feminine. It was in the quality of the light and the faint, provocative scent of the air. I took a step into the clearing. I wanted to go inside the temple, but something barred me. It seems logical to assume that it was fear that did it, but though I will admit to being wary, I know that my hesitation wasn't simply a matter of nerves, nor was it out of reverence for the deity who had surely been honored within the columns and under the array of sculptures that I now saw stood in decorative guard along the frieze. I had not originally seen them because they were in shadow, and my curiosity emboldened me to take a few steps more. I had just barely started to look at the first of the scenes displayed on the bas-relief, a woman imploringly reaching out to... I don't know what she was reaching out to because my attention was jerked away from the temple by the sound of a voice behind me. They understood so little of what they saw. The voice said, deep and confident and wistful and a little sad. I spun to see its owner. Her appearance did not set me at ease, as she bore all of the signs of the preserved archaic that the temple bore. She wore a flowing chiton dress. It was not the white linen that I had expected, but was instead a sort of denim-y blue. It had a rope-like belt that crossed in an X over her slim ribs and a neckline that softly draped. Her chestnut hair was done up in a loosely intricate bunch at the back of her head, and her skin was creamy and smooth. Too smooth. Too perfect. It was the same impression I got from the rest of her as well. From her hazel eyes, now flashing with hints of green, now with blue, always with that underlying burst of brown around the pupils. I got it from the hourglass shape of her body and the strong but elegant lines of her cheeks and jaw. I wanted to ask her who she was, or where she had come from, or where I was now, but my brain had frozen at the sight of her, and instead of any of that, I spoke to what she had said. They understood so little of what they saw. Who? I said. The people who made this temple. She looked up at it. This temple and the others like it. What did they misunderstand? I asked, stuck in the spell of not asking what I really wanted to ask. Us. What about you? Why was I asking these questions? She laughed bitterly, and then she sighed. Everything. Her eyes fell slowly from the sculpture on the temple down to me, and she motioned to the building airily. They thought we were gods. And then again there was that sadness. We never were, you know. not like they thought we were. She looked at the grass that grew up around her sandaled feet. Yes, grass. It was another thing that made the clearing extraordinary. The beautiful carpet of grass on the ground, so completely incongruous with such a clearing in the middle of a forest. No, we were not at all what they thought we were, she said again. And yet, I pressed, and her eyes came to me as though she had forgotten I was there. And yet it never really matters, does it, she said, what is true? It only matters what people wish to be true. So I suppose that, in a way, we were gods. We were gods because they wanted us to be. We were gods because that was what they made us.